Hello, welcome everybody. We're so pleased to be here. Welcome aboard GA4, the last call. If you're all freaking out about it, don't worry, everybody is. We're here to hopefully answer all your questions. Now, we have a very global audience, so we're going to wait a couple of minutes just for people to join. Please do let us know where you're viewing us from today. I'm in Surrey, just outside of London, and Brie, you're in Kansas, is that right?
Yes, Wichita, Kansas.
Fantastic. Yeah, everyone in the audience, let us know where you're viewing from today while we just wait for a few more of you to join. But today we're going to do a little bit of a run through of GA4. Brie is our absolute expert on everything GA4 today. So she is going to tell us all about everything because we've all left it to the last minute. And this is going to be super helpful. So we're going to do a little bit of a run through for the first, say, half an hour-ish, and then it's full on Q&A. So if you have any questions during that entire half an hour, just pop them in. I will scroll all the way back up to the top for the Q&A section. So if you've answered a question really early on, don't worry, I'll go all the way back and make sure that we've answered it. So we're here for you to answer all of your questions. Okay, what we got Czech Republic. Cool, welcome. Ooh, country that
Yes.
we're in, fantastic.
We
Yeah,
should have
maybe.
just put the like starting slide as the countdown, just this countdown, the big red countdown in all universal analytics accounts. It's just ticking away, man. They're like, hey,
Oh God, so
we've got
stressful.
yeah. So I'm curious. So this is, let's see, 13 hours and 58 minutes. I think that's 1 o'clock. Hold on, math. Yeah, I think that's 1 a.m. on July 1st for me. Or
For the
two.
big countdown.
So I wonder if this the same for everyone? Is it
I would have
like,
thought
does
so.
everyone say 1 hour and 13 minutes or one day, 13 hours? Or let's see, because this is what mine says. This is what mine looks like.
Right. Let me go and have a look. Let's see if anyone in the chat is saying
Yeah, and
what theirs
what
is
does
looking
yours
like.
say? Does everybody say 1 hour and or one day, 13 hours?
I thought it would all be the same,
Or
but
is it by
yeah,
time zone?
let's go and find out. Big ticking clock.
I know this thing.
It's so nice to be like really stressed out about software changes. Oh, mine's just coming. Learn more. Oh, it flashed up. I think it did say 1 day, but then it's
One,
closed again. Clearly, I've
yeah.
dismissed it far too many times.
Yeah, they'll all say, yeah, I think all in one, it'll say 1 day, but who knows? Who knows?
Awesome. Okay, right. I think we're filling up now. So that's really good. So everybody, this is J4, the last call. As I said, if you've just joined us, we're going to do a run through of J4 before a big old Q&A session to ask all the questions that you could possibly want. And just, yeah, enjoy. There are no stupid questions. I'm happy to ask anything on anyone's behalf. So let's kick this off. So I'll start by introing me. I'm Paige Hobart. I have been in SEO for just over a decade. I know I don't look it. And I'm SEO manager at a B2B SaaS company called Unily. And I'm your host today. I'm now going to hand over to Brie, who's going to intro and then kick off straight into GA4.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm Bree. I've been working in digital in some capacity for a long time as well. I don't know exactly how long, but it's been a minute. I stopped keeping track. Yeah, so I have worked, in all capacities. I worked in social media, I worked in SEO, I worked in paid. But really, the one thing that I enjoyed out of all of it was the numbers. I was one of those weird people. I enjoyed the numbers and using those numbers to drive strategy. And so, fun fact, I was actually teaching a course at the local tech school about analytics, like marketing analytics. And I, like, the night before, I like went through the whole setup. I made sure that we were going to be able to create an analytics account and look at real-time data, all of that stuff. And it worked perfectly. The next day I went to teach it. And when I created a Google Analytics property, it gave me this G dash number. And I was like, what the hell? That's supposed to be UA slash something or dash something. And that was the day that GA4 came out, and I've been working in it ever since. I didn't mean to, it was not on purpose, but here we are. So
I feel like that's like SEO analytics, everything website. You never actually intend to end up here. You just kind of fall into it and then you're like, it's all right, this.
yes. Yeah. So Barry said it's 3 a.m. Eastern that countdown's ticking to. So that's interesting. All right.
Nice.
Not overly concerned about past data. Can Google do the move automatically? Are you talking about like creating the new property and starting you from zero? Because in theory they can. So I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen so we can talk about some of the stuff that lives in here. So this is your admin section, right? It's the same as what we saw in Universal Analytics. So I think what Raj is talking about here is when you're in Universal Analytics, they have this GA4 setup assistant, right? Where they can create a GA4 property for you. And or you can like create one yourself, or you can have them create one. The problem is when they create one, they are trying to mimic your Universal Analytics property as closely as possible using the things that you've already set up, which in theory sounds good. But GA4 actually uses a completely different data structure. So, for instance, in Universal Analytics, when we created events, we had category, label, and action. And those are all different parameters that we said, hey, if all these three things meet, then I want this event to be fired. Well, in GA4, everything's considered an event and you don't have to have a category, action, and label. And so if you just blindly bring some of that stuff over, it's not really pretty. It's kind of more messy in GA4. So I suggest not doing that if you don't have to, but if that's your only option, because maybe you don't have access to like the back end, like tagging and stuff like that, then I mean, obviously make that decision. I've had a lot of questions recently about people saying, hey, I did the auto migration and you kind of recommend not going that route. What do I do? The reality of it is that's still data that you've collected and it's still probably going to be useful, especially if it's collecting all the things that you expected to see and the numbers that you care about. So I mean, I would say that you keep those, you just make the changes moving forward, right? There are a lot of things in here that Google kind of recommends that you do. So for instance, this turning on Google Signals, they say make sure you turn this on. Well, for some people, turning this on is not a good idea. So Google Signals is a third-party pixel that runs off of Google Ads data, and in some instances, in some places, there's actually legislation against mixing first and third party data. So I would talk to a privacy expert and make sure that that's even legal for you to do, and that it's in line with what your company wants to do. The reason they tell you to turn it on is because that's how you get demographic data. So that's where you're getting your gender, age, and interest data. But yeah, so it
Yeah.
just
We turned
sends
this
you.
on. I was like, yeah, obviously we want all that demographic data.
Yeah.
Immediately lost all of my landing page stuff because it all got
Yeah.
sampled. And then we ended up having to turn that on, but change, I think, the data streams or the
Yeah.
data import settings so that it wouldn't then sample everything. And I was like, for a whole week, I had like 3 pages of SEO
Yeah.
data. I was like,
So
oh my God.
that's the other part of it, right? Is if you turn on Google Signals, then you're subject to more thresholding and sampled
Yeah.
data. Because what Google doesn't want you to do is be able to like attribute things back to a specific user. That's the whole goal. But what that means is that yeah, you get less data that way, and less accurate data as well because it is all sampled. So, let's see. As a small business owner who can only hope that my web designer has added GA4 to my site, how can I check that they have actually added it? Very good question. There are a couple ways. I mean, you could just go into your GA4 account and see if you have any sort of data in here. So if you just go into the report section and go into real time, you can see if you're getting data in here. Another option is to use Google Tag Assistant. So this is a Google Chrome extension. I don't know that you guys can actually see Chrome extensions on these live casts, but there's a Chrome extension called Google Tag Assistant, and it will show you all the live pixels on the site when you go to it.
And that's
So
the same as Google Tag Manager, isn't it? Google Tag
um
Assistant.
yeah, yes, but you can use this Tag Assistant Chrome extension without having access to Tag Manager, actually.
Got you.
Yeah,
Lovely. So that can just, you can view what's on there without actually having access
right.
to it.
Without having
Lovely.
access to it. Yes, yes. Yeah, no more pop-up window after July 1st. Um, yeah, so let's talk about, so you were talking too about you had to change, so once you turned on signals to get around thresholding, so that comes from the reporting identity. What you were saying is probably, this is
Yes.
probably what you
Yeah.
changed.
And I had
So
to change it to device based.
device based,
But
yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what the differences are, Brie.
Yeah, so that's
Tell us.
yeah, so GA4, when it came out, Google kind of vaguely said, hey, this is the analytics platform of the future. And one, it is because of privacy, right? Like everyone's like, why do we have to make this change to GA4? And why is it so abrupt? And why does it start from zero? The reality of it is Google was collecting some data that they probably shouldn't have been collecting, and it was accessible by its users, and it just wasn't legal in a lot of countries, and they were getting sued out the wazoo. So they had to move us all over to this new platform, and they had to get rid of all the old data because we weren't supposed to get it in the first place. And that data is mostly like IP addresses and things of that nature, like really identifiable information. Um, so that was one part of it. The other part of it was that a lot of things are going cookieless, right? We know that iOS 14.5 made it to where users could like opt out of tracking altogether on their devices, and then more and more things are happening where like, you know, especially in the EU and places like that, where you have to accept cookies, and if you don't accept them, then maybe you're not trackable. There's just all this stuff, right? And so that's where this reporting identity comes into play. So in GA4, they use 4 different ways to identify users. One is a user ID. So this could be something that Google creates for you, or if you use a client ID. So some people will actually create client IDs for their customers. You can pass that along. And then device ID. So these are the two that are used out of the box more than likely. Device ID is for specific instances of the app or site. So yeah, for specific devices, right? Obviously.
Yeah. And I just want to jump on the thing you've mentioned there about app.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing with GA4, right? Is it's for your website, but it's also for your app. That's the
Yeah.
whole, like, I've heard that it's actually GA4 is a Firebase analytics. Firebase is an app-based analytics, and that's actually where this has evolved from. It's not even evolved from UA. I don't know why they're
Yeah.
calling it GA4 because it's actually not even. But that's why it's so different, and why some of the names are a bit weird, like page and screen, because it's
Yeah,
website and app,
so,
right?
so GA4 is essentially a new iteration of Web Plus app that we saw in Universal Analytics, which is exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to track both website and data and your Amazon or your, sorry, I just got a text on my screen. I was like, Amazon
Just to throw
data,
you off.
your app data,
Yeah.
all in one place. Because I mean, the reality of it is that Universal Analytics came out in 2012. And was there a ton of app traffic? Like, did a lot of people have their own apps that they were also using in conjunction with their websites? I mean, yes and no. Mostly no. Like, small businesses didn't have apps. Um, And so, that's just another big change that we had to deal with.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's why you're seeing like web and app in here, is because we can track both of those inside of GA4 together, and the data kind of all melds together.
Yeah.
And that's why you see like weird naming conventions every once in a while. So these are the two things that we basically have access to. We can use this. Now Google Signals, again, if we turn that on, we can use this, which is just like another this is like if people are logged into their Google account, then we can, track them. And then in GA4, they also have modeling. So this is where, we kind of have that messy middle of like, well, we can use device based, we can use user ID, but what happens if we can't gather any of that information because they're browsing incognito, or they it rejected our cookies, right? This is where modeling comes into play. So Universal Analytics relied heavily on sampling, right? So they would take a subset of your data and they would create things and say like, oh, well, 50% of your users came from organic, and really you had 3,000 users. We'll give you 1,500% of those. It was a whole bunch of math, right? Modeling, what modeling does is it's different in the sense that it uses all of the data that's available and then says, okay, but we do have some gaps in here that we need to fill. So we can assume, 20% of users are using cookieless browsing, and then they kind of makeshift things from there. And this is new in GA4. So what
And
happens though is,
that's using
go ahead.
machine learning, isn't it,
Yep.
to model constantly based on the data it's receiving, right?
Yes, yeah, and you'll see that like it takes some time. It does have to collect a lot of data in order to do it somewhat accurately. But you'll be notified once the modeling is in effect for your site. But yeah, if you change it to device based, then you get technically more accurate data in a sense, but you're getting a smaller portion of your data because it has to be tracked back to a device. So double-edged sword. There's a lot of decisions to make when it comes to GA4, which is, both good and bad depending on how you want to look at it. So
Yeah, definitely. In my instance, we don't have like huge amounts of traffic, which a lot of our audience might not have, like an e-commerce level of traffic. So
yeah,
sometimes having that granular view, but of a little bit's better. Like I was showing up more conversions with device based than it was with the blended view, just because
yeah,
there wasn't enough traffic.
yep.
Thanks, Anton. There's a question from Ted Bingham. Do you know? Ooh,
It went
just as good.
away.
I've got it. It's fine. Do you know of any analytics tools that can import the UA CSV data for future data housing that's low cost or free? Great question.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people are sending people over to BigQuery, which is an option, and you can certainly do that if that's what you want to do. But in this instance, what I would recommend is just getting the Google Analytics Chrome or Google Sheets extension and just pulling the data that you care about there, especially if you don't
Yeah.
have like, you know, tons and tons. Like I have a client that has like 11 years and 9 million sessions worth of data, which is not going to be easy to pull into a Google Sheet.
Yeah.
But if you're not on that end of things, even if you are really, you could pull it into a Google Sheet, and then it actually makes it easier because you can use it in Looker Studio and
Yeah.
visualize it
That's
and that
it.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
And we've got it for a year, right? Like UA
Yeah.
stops, but
Yep.
we've still got that data in UA. I did hear you can't add new people to UA to look at that data. So if you've got any people you want to add to analytics, do it before the cutoff. But that data is still accessible. I
Right.
imagine in the next 12 months, we're going to see a lot of people playing around with the best places to put that data.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got it for a year. Don't panic about having to like store that data just yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And two, I mean, just think about before you start grabbing. I mean, everybody's panicked about it, and I mean, I get it, but how often are you looking at data from 5 years ago?
Yeah. Although I will say, because of, I don't want to say it, but COVID, seasonality
Yes.
from the past 5 years can be helpful, but you don't need to
Absolutely.
pull every single day, right? You just want to make sure you've got that graph, you've got that seasonality to look back
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. So
Maybe by
just think,
channel.
right. I mean, and my point more so wasn't that people aren't looking at 5 years ago, which some people aren't. But it's more so like before you go in and start panicking about like how do I get all of this data out of Universal Analytics, sit down and think about like, okay, what data am I going to use? Like why, what am I going to use it for? How am I going to use it? And that will give you a better idea of like the things that you do need to save and extract from Universal Analytics. Like for some, weekly reports for new users over the last 4 years, like that's what they care about because maybe they have a blog and they're trying to, see how that increases over time. I don't know. But do a little reflecting. I wouldn't say just like haphazardly take everything from Universal Analytics.
Yeah, 100%. As with everything.
Yes.
Great. So regarding events and conversions, why would we see an event fire in real time? Yeah, it doesn't show up in the admin section of events, so we can toggle it to a conversion.
Yeah, so GA4 for fun here.
Everything
Doesn't
is an event, right? Everything.
Yes, everything's an event. But also the data takes forever to like show up. Like it'll show up in real time, but then you in some instances have to wait 48 hours to see it in like accurately see it in your reporting section or in the event section, in the conversions section. So Brittany, my question to you would be how quickly are you trying to go in there? Because it does take, like I said, up to 48 hours for all of that to populate throughout the rest of the platform. I don't know why it's
That's
so
good to know
slow.
though. 48 hours is like we all know Search Console's got a delay. So it's good to know that GA4 probably doesn't tell you it's got a delay, but it does.
It does. It certainly does. And you'll see too, because people will be like, well, I wasn't here yesterday and it said I had this, this much, and now today it says this much. And it's like, yeah, well, it's because that's
Data.
because they added more data in. Yeah, because GA4 is actually batching you, like you said. So GA4 is completely event based. Universal Analytics was hit based. So everything is considered an event. And because of that, so like first, so it'll be like session start, first session, like those things are going to go at the same time, right? Because it's the first time a user came to the site. And then, if they click on something and then they viewed your video because you have a video on the homepage, all of those events have to be collected. What Google is doing is they're batch collecting and sending events over. So it does like delay things a little bit. So just something to be aware of.
Yeah, really good to know.
Thomas, I have really bad news for you. If you guys want to bring up Thomas.
Oh no.
So in Universal Analytics, we used to sort by absolute change, which was an absolute game changer. Was very nice to have. Yeah, we can't do that in GA4 yet. Sorry.
Is there a feedback button? Can we all get together and tell them we want that back?
I know. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, we don't have it yet. Not just yet.
Oh, that is a shame. We've got a question from Justine Wood. Sorry, Thomas.
Sorry.
How would you fix the issue that data is not flowing, but the geocode is on the website?
Ooh, that's interesting. That could be a myriad of different things. I mean, I would test where on the site it is. Like, is it in the head? Is it in the body? How is it on the site? Did you hard code it? Did you use Tag Manager? And make sure also, like, sometimes it's worth recopying the code and putting it back on the site, because even one little change, like I know people try like customize it for whatever reason, and it's like one little change. The thing with code is it's extremely finicky. You could change one character and it throws off the whole thing. So I would check that. Sometimes it's worth just stripping it, starting over.
Yeah, because I mean, it could just be that it's not been implemented correctly, or maybe the tag isn't firing like early enough when that page is loading potentially. Yeah, there's like you said, a myriad of different things. But I mean, there are some good things to GA4, right? Like the fact
absolutely.
that everything is an event, it means it's super easy to set up conversions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So if we go into the admin section here, this is that event section that I cannot remember her name. I've already lost it. Brittany was saying, hey, I'm not seeing my events come in here yet. So what she's talking about more than likely is this section where you go into admin and then under your properties you see events, and in events what you see is this is kind of a good place to do like a gut check, like, hey, are all my events tracking and are they tracking somewhat correctly? And this is that screen, so you can see all the different events that are being fired, how often they're being fired on your site. And then if you want to create a conversion for something, so like maybe I want this newsletter sign up to be a conversion, all I have to do is hit this toggle and now it's enabled as a conversion. And when I come in here, it will start tracking all this data in here, which is 1,000 times easier than it was in Universal Analytics. And then yeah, you know, the next thing you could do in here, especially if you work in paid, is you connect it to Google Ads and then you mark it as a conversion there. And, you know,
so much easier. Like, that's so like helpful of them to just be like, well, here's a load of events. Here's a load of ones that you've not even had to tell us about that we just know. And yeah, crack on. Yeah, really nice. Right, Thomas Broadbeck, the best way to remove not set in reports, or is that a Google Signals issue? Now, I was trying to get my head around something the other day that you can have a session with no page view. And I was like, wait, what? Because the end of session is 30 minutes in activity, if that tab's left open, you go away, you do some other things, we all do this. You come back, you maybe watch a video, you press play on something, and then just leave. There's no page view in that session. So there would be. I don't know if that would be not set or just blank though. But that kind of blew my mind.
So not set, usually where we've seen not set is more so instances where, well, no, I think you might be right actually. I think it might be that instance. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't really know. I kind of just go, well, I guess I'm shit out of luck there.
Yeah. I guess with cookies as well. Yeah.
Let's see. I don't even know. That's one of those things that I usually just go back to the documentation. I know a lot of people are like afraid to look at. I don't have anything in here.
You got nothing. It's great.
Nothing. I know. I really highly suggest there's a ton of in the let's see, not set in GA4. There's tons.
You're seeing the experts at work here.
Yeah, this is how it works. Placeholder when it hasn't received any information for a dimension, and it's different for each dimension. So here you go. This is what you can look at.
So it just doesn't have any information. So quite possibly in that instance I spoke about, that would be not set because there wasn't a page that loaded within that session. Therefore, it doesn't exist. And various other reasons.
Yeah, so it really depends on the dimension. But yeah, landing page, like you said, would be because they didn't technically have a page view.
Yeah, because it doesn't know any, if it doesn't happen within that session, right? GA4 doesn't know. It can't see what's happening. It can only register that page is loaded, register that another page is loaded, register that an event has fired, but it doesn't know all these other things.
Yeah,
landing
and you
page
make
is
a
an
good
organic,
point. Landing pages for organic. You make a good point when you were talking about the so session timeout. This lives in a place that most people are never going to see, but should definitely go and find, is under your data streams. If you click into your data stream, there's this option for configuring tag settings. And a lot of things live in here. So you see settings. If you go to show all, this is where you can configure stuff for cross domain tracking, which is extremely important in GA4 because it automatically is collecting clicks, which is outbound clicks. So if you have another site that you're tracking information on, even though it will still give you information from that site, it's still going to say it's an outbound click because it's technically a different website, right? So cross domain tracking is here. Internal traffic and referral traffic can be defined here. So unwanted refers, this is big for people that use Stripe, PayPal, any third-party payment processor. And internal traffic is based on IP addresses. But that session timeout lives here. So you can see that, this, I set this to 5 minutes during a demo at some point. So I'm really surprised that I don't have more not set. But I was looking at pages and screens, not landing pages.
And of course,
so
that timeout is after like a complete inactivity.
Yes.
So if they're clicking around, it's not going to time out.
Yeah, so it's set by default to 30 minutes, like you were saying. So you can come in here and change it, but keep that in mind. Yeah, then you're going to probably run into more not set situations. Now, you might be tempted to say engage sessions. There's no way 10 seconds is engaged. Don't change that. And I'll tell you why. Because when we go into the reporting section of GA4, in any of these reports, really, if you come into your reports, you'll see that where we used to see behavior metrics, we're now seeing engagement metrics.
I actually love this.
Yes. And it's all based on this idea of a engaged session, which is something that was 10 or more seconds, 2 or more page views, or had a conversion event. And so if you change that engagement metric or engagement timer, you could be, changing all of these engagement metrics, which if Google's going to tell me something, if they're going to be like, this is what we consider to be an engaged session, I'm like, cool, Google, noted. I'm going to keep it that way.
Yeah. Because you're also going to be using this data.
Yes.
I just saw the question flash up about bounce rate. So this is one thing I love about GA4 is it's a bit glass half full rather than glass half empty, because it is the absolute opposite of bounce rate. Like literally, if your bounce rate is 30%, your engagement rate is 70%. It is it's the flip side. So it's the same kind of data, but it's really nice. However, bounce rate and engagement rate have changed from UA to GA4, right, Brie?
Yes. Yeah. So bounce rate was calculated. I mean, I think they were still kind of like mystical about this, right? Like it was like, we have bounce rate and it's like about these different, these different things that we consider to be an engagement, and they don't do, these things that we have determined that we are not necessarily going to tell you like fully, then we consider it a bounce. A lot of it had to do with like how they interact with the site or the page that they land on. So they had to meet different thresholds. With engagement rate, they came out flat out, said, hey, it's X, Y, and Z. They have to do one of these 3 things. My favorite thing, though, is that now we can say we want all of our metrics to go up, except for bounce rate. We want bounce rate to go down. Now we could just say we want all of our metrics to go up.
Yes, love it. So if any of you are benchmarking bounce rate from UA to GA4, expect that to be different now that the thresholds have changed. While we're in this acquisition view, there's a question from Ted again. What is the best way to see details about traffic from specific social sources, like the old source medium report?
Yeah, so you can actually look at sessions. So you can see that I created this report, which is a really cool thing in GA4. But again, one of those double-edged swords where it's like you can customize everything, but you almost have to customize everything. So the report that you get out of the box looks more like this. So this is I changed this one too. So you'll see user acquisition and then you'll see traffic acquisition, and out of the box this is set to session default channel group. So traffic acquisition is for a specific session. User acquisition is for the first time a user comes to the site. So if we're looking at session data, which is what most people are used to reporting on, then you're looking at traffic acquisition. And like I said, by default, it's set to this default channel group. If you click on that, you can change it to session source medium. And this is where, like, if you're using UTMs and things of that nature, this is where you're going to be able to see that. You can add a secondary dimension, and we'll look up campaign. So now we're seeing source medium campaign. Sorry about my dogs.
If it weren't going to be yours, it would have been mine.
Yeah.
No. This is the beauty of GA4 though, right? That everything is an event. Therefore, all of these reports are kind of like everything reports. You can go in, you can change things out, you can decide what metrics, what dimensions you want to see. It's really customizable. Whereas UA was very much like, this is the page for this is the page for that. Yeah. This is kind of everything can be everything.
Right. So, a lot of people were like, well, we lost all of this data going from UA to GA4, which in reality is not true. We lost things about like site speed and, some of those kind of metrics. But really what happens is they just condensed a bunch of reports into one, so like we have in the reporting section here, we have like user attributes, and instead of having a geography and an interest and a gender and an age, like you just come in here to demographic details and it all lives in one place. Like
and then
literally all of it lives in one place. Yeah. But if you want to, I think it was Ted who asked, Ted was asking about the source medium.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you want to always see it like this, what you can do is there's a pencil in the top right corner that allows you to customize your report. So you would just come into dimensions and you hit the 3 dots next to session medium and you set it as, or source medium, and you set that as the default. And you just click apply, save to current report, save. And now every time you come to this report, this is going to be the default dimension, which is so nice.
Yeah, so that's nice. Really nice. That. It's so customizable, isn't it?
Yeah. And you can add a secondary dimension too, which we weren't able to do in Universal Analytics, save secondary dimension. So you could do that if you add a secondary dimension in here. So like I was showing you campaign, you save it to current report, save. Now when I go back, it will always have the secondary dimension already put in there as well.
Nice.
Which is so nice.
It's so nice. Don't have to you just bookmark that, come straight there. Jobs are good. Jobs are good. Yep. Yes, I was just about to say thanks, Anton. Before we move on, how much traffic does a small site need to be able to take advantage of modeling? Now, I don't know this, and it might be a lot.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head either, and I think you're right that it is going to be a lot because this site, I don't really send people to my website. I'm an awful marketer. I'm like, if you want to work, let's like chat over Slack or something. I don't know. But this site doesn't get a ton of traffic. Let's see.
I don't think my site is eligible for modeling yet, and I mean it's the company website, so it gets a fair amount.
I do know that. So for instance, so this is something that I haven't talked about in a while either because the numbers are really high. You get predictive analytics in GA4. You can get predictive analytics. So likely 7-day purchasers, top 28-day spenders, 7-day likely to churn, all of those things you can get. But what it requires is that you have 10,000 events both ways to get it. So like 10,000 people that they could imagine being 7-day likely purchasers and 10,000 people being likely 7-day churners. You have to have both of those things in order to get access to predictive analytics. So a bit of a bummer. But I mean, it makes sense. You have to have enough data.
I think it's pretty much e-commerce only, really, from what I've heard at the moment. They're just the only people that get the sheer amount. Like I'm B2B. I'm B2B SaaS. We don't get that much traffic, not like e-commerce. Fab. So a question from T: are active users the same as unique users? Now I think users is a very interesting thing in GA4, right?
Yes. Yeah. So you're actually getting, when you look at users, I don't know, can you see? I can't look at both. If I hover over this, are you able to see the little pop-up that shows up?
I can, so hopefully they can.
Okay, cool. So if you have questions about any of these metrics, if you hover over them, it actually tells you exactly how they measure those things. So what's interesting about, let me see, I can come in here and add these metrics.
Because I also got told that new users is an absolute garbage metric and not to use it anymore.
Yeah, so you get total users. This is really interesting. You get total users, you get just users, and then let's see. Yeah, let's see. This is all users. There's so many different metrics you can look at here. I'm not seeing unique users. I was gonna say I didn't know what that was, but users, basically what you need to know is if you look over users, it's actually active users. And so if you're comparing users from Universal to GA4, which is what a lot of people have been doing, the numbers aren't the same because the data structure is different. How they measure everything is different. It's never going to be one-to-one. But the closest to what you would have seen in Universal Analytics is this total users metric, right? So kind of like how we have these engagement metrics now, where they're talking about, engage sessions. You're not going to see all sessions in here. You're only going to see engaged sessions. It's the same thing that they've done with users, is they're looking at they're looking at active users. So no, all those metrics are different. And yeah, you kind of just have to decide what makes the most sense for your audience. Generally speaking,
Yeah.
that users metric is good. I mean, because you don't want to see like inactive. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. But again, this is another one of those instances where it's like you could hover over each of these and add them all to your reports and kind of see what it is, or you could just go to the GA4 documentation and they explain all of it there as well.
Yeah, and like cookies and privacy stuff is just making that new and returning users metric just wouldn't set any KPIs against that one because it's just particularly unreliable. Cool. Let's scroll through the Q&A. There's one from Sean McGee. I'm late here, but this wasn't discussed. Do we know why the Explore tab is limited to that data retention parameter of 2 or 14 months? That does sound silly.
Yeah, so if we go back to admin, so again, this is one of those things where there's so many things to customize in GA4, you actually have to go through every single one of these. So under data settings, there's an option for data retention. Out of the box, this is set to 2 months, but you can change it to 14 months.
Would you recommend that?
Well, I was about to say, this is another GD. No, you're okay. No, you're totally fine. This is another one of those GDPR privacy. You really need to talk to a privacy expert, no matter where you are, a lawyer, something. I'm not a privacy expert. I don't really know how to advise people on all of this. I just know that there is some legislation in some places about how long you can retain data and how you can use it and all that stuff. So, basically what this affects is, yes, in Explorer you can only go back to 14 months. And it has to do with, what the legislation is. But it's not like it is an Explore, but it's not in like your aggregated reports. So all the reports that you're seeing in here are aggregated data. So it's not attributing specific users to specific events necessarily. It's all like aggregated, which just means like sums or averages or whatever, right? In Explore,
that makes sense.
You're using data that's one-to-one, specific user, specific event. And so after 14 months, you can't access that data. It's just, I don't really know.
But
again,
you're still going to have like your line graphs in Looker and here to be like, this is my organic traffic for the last 5 years. That's fine.
Right. So you'll be able to look at your reports. So like, I could go back in here if I wanted to 2021.
Show off.
Well, I told you I accidentally had to start using it. So you can see all of my data, like that's over 2 years ago, right? And I can see it all in here and aggregated. But if I went to explore and tried to look at 2021, I'm not able to look at it. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But then I guess what are you using Explore for? I'd probably be using it to look at paths to conversion,
yeah,
which, yeah, you might want to look at old versus new, but really you want to be looking at that fresh data to see, okay,
yep,
where are people dropping off right now,
yeah,
potentially.
ideally, for sure.
Cool. Oh, thank you. As J4, will there be new features and reporting added? Probably.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely. I don't know if anybody so I tweet about all the GA4 updates as they come out, and I tweeted yesterday there have been 8 releases in the last 28 days. Google knows that people are not happy about this. They know that they need a product that works for marketers. Those are the people using their products. So they're making changes constantly. And it's really ramped up in June, obviously, because there's that hard deadline, July 1st. I think we're going to continue to see it. I mean, like I said, I accidentally started using it the day it came out. When it came out, there weren't landing pages reports, right? Like there weren't the bounce rate, you couldn't get to it at all, which I still don't think you need to get to it if we have engagement rate, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But there were a lot of things that GA4 just did not have, and now we do have. So I know a lot of people are a bit, you know, negative about GA4. Understandable. It's a forced change. Nobody likes forced change. But they are putting the work in, and I think we're just going to continue to see more and more new features. And look too, like we're getting access to things that were only available to 360 users that had hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend every year on an analytics platform like Explore. We didn't have access to that prior to GA4. Predictive analytics, we would have never had access to, though most of us aren't going to reach the thresholds. You could, and then you would have access to it now, right? We're getting tools that if you thought about 10 years ago getting access to, you would have had to spend a lot of money to create on your own or a lot of money to get access to. And we're just seeing more and more of that in GA4, which is cool.
Yeah, I love that. It's so different to what UA is. They are going to continue to improve it.
Yeah.
Fab, yes, Andy Simpson. You talked about cards in your tweet this morning. So what the hell are GA4 cards?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that these exist. If you go into any of your overview reports, you see these are what are called cards. So you have new users by first default channel group. I can change it here, right? All these different things. They're all cards, right? You can actually create your own cards. So like if I go into source medium here and I go to customize report, it's really weird. This is the only way that you can create them, but I could create a new card with the dimensions available in this report. So session source medium, and I can say sessions, number of sessions. And then maybe I could give the option to look at like returning users. I don't know. And you can create a table for those things. And what's really nice about this too is you can add filters. So if I wanted to add a filter that was specific for people coming from the US, for instance, apply. So now I have a quick view of how many sessions by source medium from people in the US. I could apply this, and I'm just going to save it to current report. It's not going to make any changes to the report, obviously, because you're not seeing cards in the report. But what it does allow you to do is come into your acquisition overview. And now I can add that card to the acquisition overview that I created. I would have to find
Nice.
it, but it is in
So
here
trying
somewhere.
to bring like the Looker style reporting or Google Data Studio reporting, but into the platform itself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, again, really nice for people that want to look at stuff from specific countries or specific, like you could do one that's like a user conversion rate in the e-commerce. Like if you have your e-commerce reports, you can do like user conversion rate. And it just tells you that over time you could see it by source medium. You can, all those different things, but they're used in the overview reports basically.
Now that change that you've just done to the overview is assuming there's a lot of people on this call similar to me where there is one account with multiple users. There's things that you can publish for everyone and things that you can keep to yourself, right?
Yeah, so if you add anything to the navigation, everyone can see it. But there's this library section, which we haven't even talked about. If you come into the library section, you can create things in here, and it will add it to everyone's account, but they're not going to be like forced to use it like they would if it was in the navigation. So always be careful if you're saving things to the navigation or to any of the reports in your navigation, because that's going to affect everyone. Now, if you do anything in Explore, it's only in your account ever unless you share it. But really, even if you share it, they can't make changes to the report. If they want a similar one, they would have to copy it and then they can make changes. It's kind of weird. I don't really know what's going on
fair.
there,
but good to know like what you're looking into, what people can see versus what you can just see on your own.
Yes, absolutely.
A question from Ted. Oh, sorry. Okay, Bob. Why would I have blank entries not set? I think we did briefly cover this already with the not set. Yeah. To recap, it was mainly to do when that session doesn't necessarily have a page view event fire, right?
Yeah. So if it timed out and then they came back to it.
Yeah. Yes, there's a lot done for you in GA4. Cool. Right. So Ted Bingham again. Can you explain the lack of transparency with direct traffic? Does that contain social mobile traffic? Now, direct is the catch-all, right?
Yes, direct is catch-all. So anything that doesn't have a UTM defining source medium, or if a user is coming from somewhere that had like a query string on the end of it that Google couldn't understand, or if they directly, came to your website, which probably doesn't happen that often, or if they had it bookmarked, right? Like it's a catch. It could be any of these things, basically. So what? It's not so much a lack of transparency, I wouldn't say. It's more of a lack of understanding of where that traffic is actually coming from. Again, we talked about this browsing, we talked about incognito mode. It's they still want to give you that data, right? Because it's your data and they want you to have 100% of it, but they don't know where to attribute it to. So it just falls into that direct. What
this
I
is
found,
where UTMs can be like super helpful, right?
yes, absolutely. So using UTMs whenever you possibly can. I know some places strip them, but it's like I'd rather have some of that data than none of it. So using the UTMs when you can. And then also what I like to do is I look at source medium. So then obviously you're getting that direct traffic, but I add in the landing page as a second dimension. And generally that gives you a better idea too. Like, are they coming from specific, are they coming from like specific things where we only gave this landing page to specific people, then you can get a good understanding too. So that's a good way to kind of test it out, right? Is like if you're going to be sending out an email, knowing that, hey, well, the only people that got access to this landing page are people that came from email. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
We're
I don't
lucky.
know.
Like, if there's any other SEOs on this call, organic is one of those channels that is generally quite easy to track. It's come from there, it's gone to there. But if it's coming from social or email, like if you're just putting plain old links in there without the UTM parameters, it's gonna be really hard for GA4 to know where that traffic's come from. But the UTMs are really easy to build, right? Like I'm pretty sure I can find an example, but there's a couple of metrics you want to put in your UTM. So just add it to that link, then share it on social. Happy days.
Yeah. So you can see like the direct landing here. Okay, so this is a really good example. This says direct, and it landed on a page that I only gave out to people that listen to a podcast. So maybe I don't know necessarily where they were listening to the podcast, but I know that they had to have listened to the podcast to come to the site. So, just use them when you can use them.
Yeah, be smart with your URLs because GA4 just can't. It can't know what it can't know.
Yeah.
So if you can help it out. Conscious of time, let's see what other questions we've got in here.
Yeah. Getting close.
Yeah, duplicate. I think actually we might have caught up with everything that's in the chat. Please do keep them coming. I've got a few that we can use in the meantime. Right. Looker Studio.
Yeah.
So why don't my conversions appear in Looker Studio, Brie?
Yeah, I don't know. Don't ask me. No, I'm gonna pull this up real quick.
So what we
Don't
had
ask
to
me. I don't
do,
know.
we made metrics of our events. I don't know if that was the right way, but it worked.
Yes, yeah. So there honestly there's so many different ways that you can do it. It's actually gotten better. So there was a release a couple weeks ago where they actually made there were like 170 new things that came into the GA4 to Looker Studio connection. And it was always really weird because they were not using the GA4 API in Looker Studio, which I was always like, well, now why? We have all this stuff in the API. Why don't you just let us use it? Okay, so you get all your conversions should be in there now. So now you see you have conversion count for this and this and this and this and this. Are you not seeing that in yours?
So I just saw just conversions, not the individual ones that we had toggled as conversions. They weren't
Yes.
coming through at
So
all.
what you would need to do is you go into your data source, you click the little button, go back to edit connection and reconnect to it. And then try that.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna do that, and
yes,
I'll let everybody know on Twitter that
yeah.
it
So
worked.
do that because again, like I said, it was a recent update. Like this, I could be making this number up, but I think it came out on the 16th.
Oh,
It
so
was
really
very
recently.
recent. Yeah. So and you have to go in and do that all for every single individual account that you have, the GA4 account that you have. Once you reconnect, you get access to all these new, because like now you even get conversion rates for specific metrics.
Nice.
I've broken this one, but
It's fine. I'll
as per
reconnect it and
usual.
then it'll work. Turn it off and on
Yes.
again, basically. Yeah, right.
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
Unplug it and plug it back in and then see,
Yeah.
maybe it'll work.
Oh, Brie, do you have a course where we can learn all this and more about GA4?
Oh, I sure do. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I just actually re-recorded the entire course, put it on a new platform that allowed to people to comment on specific lessons if they have issues with it, and that allows them to have a community as well where they can ask questions to myself or others in the course. They could just connect with each other. But yeah, because there were so many changes, I was like, I could re-record everything, or I could just or like I could answer, make changes in specific places. So I just re-recorded the whole thing. So it's completely up to date. And I also post in the community feature updates that come out to GA4 as well. So yeah, you can go to that. I think I also have let me see if slash what is
Love a
it?
Bitly link.
Free
Love it.
GA4. Oh no. I don't remember it.
Brie Dash?
I don't know. Somebody else created it. I'm going to be completely honest.
That's all right.
I don't
Anton's
remember
put
it.
the link, the
Yeah,
full link in the chat on YouTube.
on
It's
YouTube.
flashing up
Yep.
again. Yep, here, go here. Well worth the money, especially just for the community itself. That sounds like a
Yeah.
really helpful place to just
Yeah. It's super nice.
check
And I
and check
stay
stuff.
I generally answer those questions pretty quickly. It's probably even faster than my emails. So um so there's that. And I mean I really do think that it's extremely helpful. I've had a bunch of people go through it at this point and say that, like I was terrified of GA4, but now I feel like I can kind of get what I need out of it. It's not so bad. So
It's not so scary. Like
yeah,
I've done one full day of training on this. Sorry, not with you, Brie.
that's all
But
right.
if I need more, I'll come to you. And it is good. It is good once you kind of understand it's not the same, and that's okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Fantastic. I feel like Anton might be wrapping us up with the
Yeah.
plugging and the Twitter accounts, but please, guys, if you have any other questions, my Twitter is just at Paige Hobart. Brie, what's yours?
Bree_E_Anderson.
Give that lady a follow. She's a genius when it comes to GA4. I'm certainly going to be hitting her up, getting into those DMs and asking what I need to unplug and plug back in again.
Yes. Tons of that happening. Thanks so much for having me. This has been fun. Everybody's been awesome asking questions and hanging out. So I appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you. Your expertise on this has been invaluable. I'm sure everyone in the chat has had a great time. Brilliant. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Catch us anytime and look forward to the next Doodle webinar.